I'm Bailey Parnell, and this is Let's Think This Through. Join me for drinks as I bring on guests for conversations that inspire, amuse, and challenge us, but in a fun and relaxing kind of way. Ultimately, it's to help us all learn and live a better, easier life. So let's think this through. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Think This Through with me, Bailey Parnell. I am just so excited for you to listen to this next guest, and I really mean listen, because whenever she speaks, I actually feel like it's like ASMR, and my brain is getting a massage, because her voice sounds so nice to me, no matter what she's saying. But fortunately for us, she's actually also pretty smart, so the content of what she's saying is pretty good for our brain too. This guest and I used to work together at Toronto Metropolitan University, and she was really an inspiration to me because she was working on resilience programming and nature-based practices for students, all while getting her PhD and raising 2 kids. And I have thought about her since beginning my own doctorate as an inspiration, as someone where, well, if she could do it, then this is a possibility for me too. Well, she is now a doctor and an author and an all-around good human specializing on learning and focus strategies. And don't we all need those with all the distractions that are around us today? So get ready to have your ears massaged because today on Let's Think This Through, I am having drinks with Dr. Deena Kara Shaffer. Deena, welcome.
Thanks. I'm so happy, in my whole body, so happy to be here. Thank you, Bailey.
I'm happy to have you too. And it was a nice excuse for me to catch up with friends that I haven't spoken to in a while. And you've been doing some really cool things. So I know just in your energy that we've both been supporting each other from social media and the sidelines. And it's great to reconnect over a drink. What are you drinking?
I got a real nerdy drink today, Bailey. I am drinking
Perfect.
nettle tea that my really lovely husband makes for me every morning. And it's not about beauty, it's about meaning. This is my late mother's mug, and I drink this cup of tea every morning in this mug. And I am blessed with a little bit of life advice. So today it says, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. And I don't know, any reminders of
I love
ease
that.
or rest for a human, like most humans, who is spinning and doing too much, I'll take it. That's good advice. I'll take it. I'll try.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah,
And if
thank
you're
you.
watching, Deena, I love your background too.
Thanks. I have to say, if that comes from you, that means a lot. This space was the uninhabitably cold playroom for my kids. There were storm windows. We had to have the heater running for 10 months of the year. And then really we just outgrew all of the spaces in this very, very small downtown Toronto house.
Mhm.
And so over time we chipped away
Mhm.
and then it became something. But make no mistake, everyone, that's a curtain. And behind that curtain is my 11-year-old's bedroom. So I'm so glad that
Yeah. Well, listen, I wouldn't have known. I just would have thought it was like tapestry, you
Thanks.
know?
Yesterday, someone was like, it has a Tahitian vibe. I'm like, great, because I live in Toronto and the
Yeah,
leaves are
obviously that was
changing
on
and it's going to
purpose.
be actually the opposite of Tahiti, but great. Great. Tahiti.
No, it suits you, and I also love that you have these motivational quotes that are on those tea bags. I think, especially the one that you said, like if we were going to think anything through, the one that nature doesn't hurry, but it always what is it? Always
And
works
yet
out.
everything is, yeah, that it all works out.
Basically,
It's like slow and complete. Wow.
yeah, you're bringing that early morning motivation today.
Thanks, Bailey. I mean, also, I've been up probably since 4 o'clock in the morning, so it's kind of midday. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking coffee.
Yeah,
But in my cool Library of Congress mug because
that
I went to
is
the
cool.
I went to the Library of Congress for the first time ever this year, and I feel like I have been missing out. That place is amazing.
Is it?
It
I
is
don't
my
know
favorite
any.
building now. It's actually my
Really?
favorite building. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I mean,
And is it
US
the
had that going
coffee?
on in DC this whole time.
I don't. I should make more trips. I should make more stops. Is the coffee the real coffee, or what did you call it in your podcast episode I was listening to with Ivan,
Oh
with
my
Dr.
gosh.
Joseph, and you're like, Hamza calls it witch's brew. I'm like, I'm into
That
both of those versions. Is it coffee or like?
Okay,
coffee.
so this one is actually real
Mhm.
coffee, and it's funny because I had to go in for a surgery last month. When was that? No, actually in August I had to go in for a surgery. And so my my in-laws came, and my in-laws have like a Costco membership, and of course I live downtown Manhattan, so I'm not and we don't have a car, and but oh my gosh, they went to Costco and did like the classic like parent run for us, which I was so grateful. And they got like this huge coffee thing. And I was like, that is the biggest bag of coffee I've ever seen. And I didn't know what to expect, but I'm telling you, it's actually really good.
Yeah,
Like
I've
we
heard.
brew the coffee here. Like that coffee
Yeah,
machine is the most used appliance in this household.
yeah,
It
yeah.
makes
I
tea
believe
too.
I've heard good things about that coffee, and I think the only drawback is like it feels like there's so much, and then you start loving it, and then what happens when it's over if you don't have access to more Costco? Another trick from the in-laws.
I literally have to go back to Toronto for Thanksgiving and a wedding, and I'm going to text my in-laws and be like, "Can you pick up
If you
Costco
wouldn't mind,
coffee
yeah.
for us?" Like,
Yes.
we would like to carry that back. We would like to import that back to the US.
I love that. Good
Yeah,
parents-in-law.
I know. They're so cute. Yeah. So, you have had a ton going on since I last saw you, but one of the biggest things that I've noticed, and I actually don't know exactly when you made the transition, but I saw a post that you are fully out of the university space. And correct me if I'm wrong, did you make the full-time jump to entrepreneurship?
I did. I did.
Woo! That's such a big leap. Congratulations.
Thanks, Bailey. And at the time of recording, it's been 2 weeks.
Wow. So I knew it. I was like, okay, I just saw this post, but I don't, sometimes we post like a month later because
Yeah.
we're getting our handle on life.
Yeah. 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 No, it just happened. And I had been thinking about it for so long. It wasn't a quick, rash decision. And it just became clearer and clearer and clearer until it was inevitable. And
Mm,
it has been a beautiful, sometimes tormenting, but deeply educative experience to work in post secondary, to
mm,
work for other humans, to work for other leaders, to work in other people's systems and processes. And I'm really done for a while. I really want to take every single bit that I have formally learned and gleaned and read between the lines and loved and bristled at, and like I want to make something beautiful. I want particularly to step into what I'm calling ethical entrepreneurship. I'm so
absolutely.
interested in this idea. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay, so wait, what were you doing? What were you doing before?
What was
What was
my
the before
job?
like? Yeah, what was your job?
Yeah. So I was the director of the Office of Student and Academic Services at York University. So I managed a lovely team of humans, hardworking frontline humans, and I was tasked with things like supporting a team for sure, being an
Mm,
excellent boss in a complicated system like all higher ed places are, and to try to do something about student retention, which is
mm,
really interesting
mm.
post pandemic. Changes in international student rates, and at an
Right.
institution that is known for having lots of labor disruptions and strikes. So
Mm.
it was a
Wow.
fascinating challenge, and a really important, I guess, contrast or like add on to being at TMU, Toronto Metropolitan University, where I was for 12 years and where you and I met and got
Mm.
to work together. And also, I'm done for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then how did you know, or like, because I know you're a thoughtful person, and how did you know it was the right time to make the leap?
Mhm. Yeah, that comes through a few different ways. I really heard so loudly from the body, actually. The
Oh, yeah.
body was what made the nudges so loud I couldn't ignore them. So I'd had a kind of cancer testing last summer. I'm
Mm.
fine.
Oh, good.
And I had one in late August, different one. and I'm fine.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And I'm like, I don't think I need a third round of this to really pay attention to I am working full time at an institution, trying to be as present as I can. I just don't want to be another jerk boss. I know what it's like to have those. I don't want to
Hmm.
recreate that. So
Hmm.
being present and heartfelt in a way, in a system where it's a losing battle, like I care about student retention. I want, if students want to stay on the journey they're on, great, but like that's a lot when there are other pressures
Hmm.
that are much bigger than you.
Hmm.
And I'm running a business on the side. I
Hmm.
also am adjunct. I teach at TMU still. I teach the learning and kind of happiness and coping course that I love. And I write and speak. So I'm like, well, I mean, also I'm a parent. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't have it in me to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do this project and then do the whole day and then
Mm-hmm.
take my kids where they need to go and then see clients at night. I'm like, I think I got to try this. I think I got to try this before I make myself sick.
Hmm.
Because it felt almost inevitable if I kept up the kind of rhythm,
Yeah.
and I kind of wanted to give myself a shot.
Yeah. Take a bet on yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, someone said, or it might have been my coach actually. So, but it was like you are trading the time for your goals anyways. Like whatever they are, whatever you're wanting to do, you're trading the time anyways in
Mm,
this life.
mm,
And I always think about that. Okay, so you're 2 weeks in. Here's a
yeah.
question. And you know what? But you're 2 weeks into full time, right? Which, I know it feels different because I made that jump too. But you have been running this business for a while.
For a while.
Do you see yourself as CEO yet?
Oof. I mean, I certainly see myself as like a bold, badass business owner. Like that
Yeah.
always been there. CEO for me, on the one hand, yes, yes. And on the other, it's like, what does that mean to someone else? Like what are the like defined molds, like how we pour batter into a mold.
Mm,
I don't want to do it like how I see other people do it. And
yeah.
so I'm like my version of CEO, which is going to be sometimes messy and sometimes polished and um like trying not to cost people too much money. Like I'm very interested in how to do this in a values aligned way. So yes, CEO, but um like a rough around the edges CEO, I think,
Yeah.
or like a kind of punky radical CEO.
Okay. I see. Because you know what? I always find that when with women in particular, it's like you
Mhm,
could have been running this business, small business forever and didn't see ourselves as this leader.
mhm,
But I'm glad to hear that you do, and honestly, I really like the concept of ethical business.
mhm,
We talk a lot about this in these walls as well,
mhm.
and social entrepreneurship, the idea that financial gain is not the only metric of success. You
Mhm.
know, what are you
I
playing with right now?
mhm. Well, and I just to reflect back, like you and Hamza in your independent businesses and collaboratively, you enact this all the time, very genuinely. It doesn't feel like there's competition with the other entrepreneurs. You are always trying to uplift the
Oh, thank you.
like community, the people around you, the people who you're trying to seed plant for. Like I see it. I really see
Oh,
it.
wow. That mean I have like full body shivers coming from you. That means a lot.
But it's really like, I mean, it didn't take you very long to then create like funding pathways for people to access higher ed. Like I see that. Um, I see the way that Hamza has been like available on text. You guys are around the world speaking, 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 speaking. And I'd be like, so I'm kind of wondering about this, and I will get a reply.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think both of you embody this idea of like helping hand instead of see ya, like see ya. And you're both,
Later.
yeah, but it doesn't feel like that as, and you are both like skyrocketing in terms of success. It's gorgeous to witness. It's
Oh,
inspiring to be an observer. but it also feels like you're scooping people who are
Oh.
hungry also and who are trying, being like,
Yeah.
all right, I'll show you what to do. I'll help. All right, I'll answer that. And I don't think that happens. I mean, there were people that I've reached out that I've also been in work and school
Mhm.
relationships with who I asked, like, can I just bend your ear? Because I wasn't born into business. I didn't take business
Mhm.
training. I'm kind of I'm kind of making it up as I go along, which might be the truth for
Mm.
everyone, but I don't have a context necessarily that's like, do this, I'll be a secret patron. Like, that's not my world.
Mm.
I'm making it up. And I've had people be like, sure, I charge $1,800 for half an hour, even though we went to school together and we're neighbors. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
oh, but if I had that, if I had access to that, I
Mm.
wouldn't need to ask those questions. And so this like generosity of spirit is the thing that has moved me so much about your approach and what I really want to lead by. I really want to lead by. I tell the students I teach, I'm like, you come
Mhm.
to office hours, you can ask me questions about the assignments or how to write books. Like, ask me
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
How can I be helpful? How can
Yeah.
I be helpful? So the metrics for me, your question, um, is like every time a student says school feels more doable, boom, like that's it. I won. I won. I
Oh,
can
yeah.
retire. You just aced university. Like you got it. You got it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know that so your focus is not just how they get through school, it's
Yeah.
also how they be they learn, and I'm sure we'll get there, but I want to actually take a moment to return the compliment to you too and give you your flowers because it's so funny that you're saying that about us, and I appreciate it, and I take it on board for sure. And but when I there's no but. And when I think back to working alongside you, I actually started at one point I was working with like as a student and then I transitioned into like full-time staff. And throughout that time I had like different levels of interaction with you. But one of the things I remember that stands out like by the way, like I think about even today, I think about is how you were working full time at the time you were creating new resilience programming and we were kind of that's what we were collaborating on. But what stood out for me was that you were also mom of two, right? And you were doing your PhD. And I don't know if you think back to this time like, oh, that was a lot. But when I saw it, like I'm right now probably oh my gosh, you know what? I
Are you
actually
halfway?
you're gonna appreciate this. Not many people understand. I was just approved for candidacy this week. And I
Congratulations.
thought about you
That's
because I
lovely.
thought, if Deena was able to have meaningful work, raise a meaningful family, like, thoughtful family, and also do school and also be nice to people, like, why? Okay, you can do this. There's people that have done this that are good people. So I think about you as well.
Thanks, Bailey. You are doing it. You are doing it. And I love that you're doing it. One joy for me in having done a PhD is trying to demystify it for other people. It's just a project. It's a long project.
Mm,
The time is going to pass. If you're interested in something, if you find stuff juicy, and if you want to be a person who generates knowledge, not just like receives, digests, makes meaning out of it, but like if you want to make some
mm,
knowledge, this isn't the only way to do it, but it can be a really fun and cool way to do it. And it is manageable. Um, it is manageable. It doesn't have to be equated with suffering. That's usually
mhm,
what people talk about. It's like, oh my gosh, what a slog. Oh my gosh, it's so long.
mhm,
There's no way I could do this for 5 years or 7 years. It's like, well, I don't know. If you're kind of curious about something,
mhm, mhm,
maybe you don't sell yourself short. That like you do have sustained capacity and attention and care. It's a project. It's a project, and I'm very
mhm.
excited for you and your project. What do you think about doing your PhD? Now, this is your podcast, but like, what do you make of it?
Oh, yeah, true,
Like
true, true.
it?
Wait a sec, I was supposed to ask the questions. Actually, no, it's okay. It could go in any direction. It's actually technically a doctorate of education, and I know that in some spaces people really care a lot about that distinction, and it's been interesting. I mean, no one would ever bring that up to me. I think it's like because that's a douchebag comment, but like I think and it really is meaningful to me that it's a doctorate of education in learning and organizational change. So this is something where, to your point, where it's like, oh, could you study that for 3, 4, 7, 5, however many years? And it's like, well, this is literally what we do every day at Skills Camp. We are taking learning in an effort to have people and organizational change. So it's like I would be doing this work anyways in a weird way. And I actually really like that it's under the School of Education, because there's a version of this, and I came in and I applied to a couple of them, and the universe had its way with me because there's a lot of them under the School of Business.
Mhm.
And to your point earlier about how business has been done in the past, I don't know if it is as aligned with me and what we do
Yeah.
to be taking a organizational change doctorate from the School of Business. So it's like kind of interesting how that happened.
I love that. I love that. And I mean, it certainly speaks to me. I was on the precipice of saying yes to doing an MBA this year.
Oh,
And surprisingly, I got family support. My husband did not say like more school. He was very kind about it. Um, but I actually didn't want to learn business. I don't, that's not going to be the best use, I think, of these
mm,
minutes. I think I just want to do it, practice it, and through mentorship and through
mm,
conversations. Um, so I get that. I get the desire to learn about it through like a formal education space.
mhm.
Um, and maybe not, we'll see, but maybe not recreate the same patterns of doing business. Cool. I can't wait. I can't wait to read what you write and see how it ripples out.
Well, and vice versa. And speaking of writing, I know that you have a new book coming out, don't you?
I do. I have only a proof, so and there's typos,
Oh,
but
you
that's
need
what
to
the proof
show.
is for. So, but it's lovely. Yeah. So it's called Raising Well Learners, and it's a book to parents on learning strategies. So we think of learning as happening in schools and something is going on for a learner, and maybe there is a teacher who can, through delivering curriculum and the pedagogy and the different kind of pathways of access and in the
Mm,
relationship, that it's like that dyad is going to be the thing that makes it. But like parents are on the receiving end when their kid is at home and they're not doing their homework, or they're procrastinating, or
mm,
they're overwhelmed, or they like don't understand the assignment. And so I want to equip parents with what they can do to nudge and help and support. And this is really like I have a lot to say about the book writing process. Um, but when
say it.
if folks see this, they will see that like Silken Lauman wrote an endorsement for it. She's for your American fans, that might not mean so much, but she was like an Olympic rowing champion in
Oh,
Canada,
huh.
um, and Neil Pasricha has written an endorsement. And one of my favorite humans, Avery Swartz, says, like, there are people who believe in me
Mhm.
who it's just been a slog to get here, you know?
Oh,
And
yeah,
like,
shout out to Avery.
yeah, like really. I mean, she's been such a champion and good human. And it's a really beautiful thing when people take a shot at you, even if your quote unquote profile is small. And that's been the big test. That's been like the
Mm.
big test. So I had publishers say, "Whoa, Deena, you're like the right person at the right time, writing the right material, but are you ready?
What?
You don't have enough Instagram followers."
Oh, yeah, yeah, I know, man.
That really, like, I don't think I will ever unfeel what that was. And
Mhm,
I'm so grateful for people like you trying to undo and teach against the harm that
mhm,
exists in those spaces. But like, I've had agents sit on the work for a year. I've had to eventually say like,
mm.
but your profile's too small.
It's
They're
so
like,
annoying, it's so
wow,
frustrating.
yeah. I'm like,
Like, that's not the
but if the
only
work is good, like,
that's not how
wait a
the
minute.
best books you've ever read, literally ever read, maybe, had no Instagram even in
I
existence, like,
know, I know,
gosh.
I know.
So where did you publish then?
So my first book, Feel Good Learning,
Guess,
which I
which I
don't think,
have here.
thanks, thanks, thanks. That book I published by myself. I was like, screw you,
Yeah.
system. I'm gonna figure this
Mhm.
out myself. It took a long
Yeah.
time for me to get over my ego around that. Uh, but to be like, actually, I just directly want the students I teach to have this. I want the students I coach to have this. I
Mhm,
want people to have this. There's something here that isn't already out in the world. I'm
mhm,
just going to make it happen.
mhm.
So trying to like that, it's that bold, badass thing that eventually happens. Like, I'm so tired of waiting. I have it in
This is
me.
it, right? Like, I don't think a lot of people listening, well, we're about to tell you, but it has changed in the traditional book publishing industry. It is like that seems obvious, but one of the things that has changed, and I've looked into this recently as well, is that it's not maybe like it used to be, oh, self-publishing is odd. And, 30 years ago, I don't know, if you self-published, it was because you couldn't get a publisher. I'm telling you, this has done a complete 180. This is
Totally.
now, I'm looking at it like there are agencies that do self-publishing. Like
Ah,
they're like in the in between, and they're kind of like, we also agree that you should have something out, and that this is like a creation thing, in that you just want it distributed, published, edited, maybe even illustrated, maybe all the things, maybe marketed, but there are no gatekeepers.
yeah.
And the traditional publishing, one thing that like bothered me about the process is that is what you said, it does not align with my brain, is we get to determine how long we take with your manuscript,
Yeah.
and you just have to suck it up because we're not allowing publishing anywhere else, and you can't be taught, and you can't have sent this to anyone else. And I'm like, this does not compute with my brain.
Totally. Look, there are not so many minutes that we have. It's very, very precious. There are ideas that come for us and that we articulate them. Um, so it was in me to put out, and I just got tired of waiting. So
Mhm.
that was a great exercise, and it was a community endeavor. A beloved friend and kind of colleague, co-student. When I tried my foray at another graduate program, was the first time I dropped out. That was a very good decision. But she kept going, and she's a beautiful designer, and she did the cover. Another person, like a kind of beauty wizard, she helped with some of the logistics stuff. A
Mhm.
brilliant human in Argentina through Fiverr did the formatting. It's so gorgeous. I'm
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
okay, so we're just going to make this up. But even in that time, I met with, what do they call them? Vanity publishers, hybrid publishers, who are
Mhm.
like, for 30 grand, we'll put out your book. I'm like, this
Mm.
has to stop. All of this has to stop. I think
Mhm.
I just need to hunker down, and for a couple $100, I'm going to put
Mhm.
my own book out and see what happens. And
Mhm.
so the second book is put out by a publisher, Pandemonium Publishers,
Mhm.
here in Ontario. And the really cool thing, Bailey, which,
Mhm.
who knows if it will happen, but then a like renowned UK publisher reached out to me and
Mhm.
said, would you write a proposal for a third book? And we'll
Oh, no
see.
way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they like the proposal. You know, we're still in process, but it doesn't even matter if it comes to be. It's just like, oh, I didn't have to keep pushing that rock up the hill
Mhm.
forever. And
And you
so
took a
that's been
chance
really
on
sweet.
yourself.
Mhm.
And it's like, if you did not push that rock a little bit, you wouldn't have been able to open the rest of the story. Like, if you didn't put out Feel Good Learners, then there could be no Pandemonium. There could be no next book, right?
That's right. That's
So
right.
then what's the difference between what's covered in Feel Good Learners and what's in the new book, Raising Well Learners?
Yeah, so Feel Good Learning is a book to students that's meant to be uh, like a friend to any student, any age. That's like, how do I study?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
how do I
okay.
do this thing called school? And say from like grade 5 and middle school, through to high school and post-secondary, whether it's college or university, and to mature learners who are coming back. And it's
Yeah.
lovely. I know many people who are like, oh, well, I used to own a fashion boutique. I closed that after a decade and a half, and now I'm training to become a psychotherapist, but I have no idea how to do school. I'm like, I can really help you.
Oh, so
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 that's
good.
my offering of the fundamental things that are underneath anything you want to learn. That's the point of learning strategies. Anything you want to learn.
Mhm.
Executive MBA or grade 6 science. There are
Yeah.
things around time and remembering and attention and communication that are helpful and are never
Mhm.
taught. Raising Well Learners is offering more learning strategies about different areas like group work and motivation and like how to prioritization, perfectionism
Mm.
for parents when they're like, my kid is suffering, and I don't think they really know how to do school. I don't think they quite know the skills to be a learner.
Mm.
So and to be well. So to not be up all night studying,
Mhm.
to not feel like they are in class but not getting it, and then coming home being like,
Mhm.
I know the instructions were given to me, but I couldn't tell you a single thing that my teacher said today. I
Right,
want to
right.
equip parents with something to do when it's not going so well for their kid.
Wow. I feel like we need to get feel good learning. If you're listening and we can get feel good learning into every orientation package, I think it should be there. And then raising well learners is like it sounds like it's like it could be in the parenting book circle.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And may those things happen. May those things happen. May a big fancy publisher be like, actually, we love that feel good learning. Let's just like edit it up a little bit and like get it out to that's it. It is it's like it's a gesture of care.
Hmm.
It's the thing that I know that happens in the alchemy between a learning strategist and a student, but not everyone even knows what a learning strategist is, knows how to find one, can afford one. So it's
Hmm.
like, for $18,
Hmm.
here's everything I can think of about the basics of doing school. Here you go. Here you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not even just formal school. Like I think what you said there is it's called feel good learning, not feel good post-secondary students, right? And to your point, like that's anyone listening who's like I would like to take a LinkedIn learning course on being a better project manager and I
Yeah.
want to commit this to my professional development,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Still have to
exactly it.
study.
That's
Mhm.
exactly it, Bailey. You got it.
And also what's interesting about your approach and just like your area of expertise is that you are pretty versed in this area of neurodivergence and how like learning and then how the brain works are two things that are married basically. But first off, can you define neurodivergence for people listening who are not even in education or in this world at all?
You know what's so funny? So we can, like, would include things like ADHD and autism, but I actually am so excited, Bailey,
Hmm.
for what the next languaging will be.
Yeah, yeah.
Because neurodivergence still, if we talk about neurotypical or like neuro learning norms, we're
Hmm.
still talking about things that are in tension with each other. We're still talking about a friction between like people who what learn normally and then people
Hmm.
who don't. It
Mm.
still feels divisive to me. I'm not taking away the importance of a human who's like, I'm neurodivergent, or the language of like there's
Mhm.
neurodiversity that is present in my classroom. I get it and it's helpful, and thank goodness it's here, because it has taken a lot of shame away for learners who never ever saw themselves as like
Mhm.
having other folks in community with them having a tough go of things. But I'm ready for neurodiversity 2.0,
Mhm.
because if we're using language of diversity, it really for me begs the question of diverse from what? And
Mhm.
it's not
Mhm.
dissimilar from when I hear conversations around justice, education, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. The word diverse, it's like, I get it,
Mhm.
and it's insufficient, because there's something that's being perpetuated in that wording that
Mhm.
I want to see what like the next radical exploding that open is.
Mhm.
Because I don't know, does anyone learn normally? Sometimes people have an easier time, like less things in the way, fewer barriers between a particular way of teaching a particular
Mm.
curriculum in a moment. But there are people who don't have a diagnostic sentence, who don't have a kind of a pathology of it. It just medicalizes something that I really think that
Mm.
we could, like, we will do better in the decades to come. It will be bust wide open around the range of what it means to be a human. That's
Yeah,
what it feels
exactly.
like. It's just a range of like the beauty. So last night I have a session with a student, and how they would identify as trans, autism, still using language of autism spectrum disorder, which like I am
Mhm.
is sort of phased out a little bit. This like, or like Asperger, like
Right.
that, where the language is shifting, and the ADHD, and then around processing. So they're very aware of like the layered experience. And I'm just sitting in awe. They're so brilliant and they're so bright. I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna really be with you, alongside you, and I'm going to reflect back to you all the inner wisdom that you reveal all the time. That's all I'm going to do.
Mm.
And I think you already know what is getting in your way, I'm just going to help you shine a light on it. And the biggest thing I hope your takeaway is with this lovely human, right? Is like, you so belong. You so
Mhm.
belong in any space you want to belong to. You so have richness to contribute. Um, how do we just help you get on your way to what you want to do?
Yeah.
So I'm like conflicted. I am torn around language of neurodivergence
Mhm.
because it has
I
been
can see
a
that.
helpful landing place and also, I think, not enough.
Well, I mean, that kind of complexity would be required of somebody doing what you do, and I think would probably being able to hold two ideas in your head at the same time is pretty important. I wish more people were able to do this, but I like this idea that, and I think about this with something like autism as well. If it is produced, if it's like if we want to think about it like some spectrum, then then we're saying like, oh yeah, traditional schooling kind of services like here. And then if you don't fit into like that little part of the spectrum, then you're saying you're the one that's not typical. And I totally hear you because to be on this spectrum, it is natural. To have been produced, literally to have been born in a brain, it means that it's natural and it means that the system is not servicing what is obviously natural.
Yes.
But what hurts my heart, and I can tell with you too, is that I know people, like I know like 40 and 60, 90 year olds who were so turned off of learning
Yeah,
because school turned them off.
that's right. That's right. So
Mm.
what worries me is if we hyper focus on the languaging and titles that we give to things, which aren't unimportant. They really help orient people. I get that. They're like, oh, it's such a relief to get this psych ed assessment, such a relief to get the words of ADHD.
Mm.
I get it. And also, it's not the person who is a problem.
Hmm.
It's never the person who is a problem.
Gosh, especially kids. Like,
There is a system that is so fraught. And there are questions being asked, but it doesn't actually change all that much. Like there are curricular iterations. Okay, we're gonna include this, we're not gonna include this, we're gonna teach it this way. And we get so hung up on that, but that's surface level. So I really I
mm,
remember there was one person actually, I don't know if we both worked for them as a senior leader or if you had already moved on, but there's a quite a brilliant senior leader at TMU, and I think she would use the language of like, we need, how did she say it? Like, it's not that we need a university ready student. We
mm,
need a student ready university.
mm,
And the brilliance of like, what is the direction we're working on? I'm a person who helps students learn skills. It's no denying it because I'm always empathetically drawn to, I don't want that student to feel alone at 11
mhm,
o'clock at night, not knowing how to do the work they
mhm.
want to do or have to do in order to get to where they want to go. So I'm going to teach them how to study and remember and recall and repair their attention. But it's the institutions that actually need to do the
Mhm,
biggest shifting
mhm.
to enable and allow and create pathways for students
Yeah.
in and through. That's the problem. That's the pathology. It's not that there's anything wrong with any beautiful learner. So
Yeah.
that's what has me jazzed and ready. Like, great, we had a word, it freed people up, created community, and now what? Like, now where are we
Well,
gonna
this
go
is
with
like the top down, bottom up work. Like, and you are capable of understanding both. That bottom up is the individual learner, the individual parents, and you're helping them too. We've got feel good learning. We've got raising well learners. I'm going to help you in those moments. But I'm also understanding that top down, these systems, policies are things that need to change for all of those learners. To, you know what it's like to ideally not even need my book anymore. Success is
it?
this is not even needed anymore because it's just part of school, you know?
That's so true. That's so true. I mean, the point of a learning strategist, I have a fairly big team, and the work is like, make yourself redundant.
Well,
Have
well.
your co-create the repertoire and toolbox with your student and have
Mhm.
them feel so equipped and clear and feeling academically confident and well that they just go on their way and they bring
Yeah.
those tools into the professional pursuits. Great. That's it.
Yeah.
Joy, maximum joy.
That's so true too, because people who are outside of typical, let's say, instead of neurodivergence, we could say, what could we say instead? Let's think this through.
Let's think this through. I love it. You know, it's always going to be the pushback of labeling. It's just the
Yeah.
variety of learning, like the variety of human experience. But what's the
Okay,
like
so how about
essentially?
this?
Yeah,
Learners that don't fit into typical schooling,
yeah,
schooling
yeah,
styles of teaching.
yeah.
This actually does lead to something I wanted to ask you on a segment called On Second Thought.
Mhm,
Because in this segment, I discuss one thing that the guest thinking has significantly evolved on over time. So maybe you
mhm,
thought one way before, or through knowledge and experience,
mhm.
you've come to think differently. And I was wondering if were there any misconceptions about neurodivergence or learners outside of typical teaching strategies or learning challenges that you initially had? So misconceptions that you had which you reconsidered over time.
Mm, I love this question so much, Bailey. The thing that feels truest for me to say is I think I had focused on strategies for a long time. I really wanted
Mm,
to be rich and fulsome with the interventions and apps and hacks and tools
mm,
and tips that I can give to students. Like if I just like keep throwing more at you. And for the students who I see who identify as neurodivergent, neurodiverse, which actually is
everyone?
almost all of them. Um,
Yeah.
uh, I I think that the truer thing is it's something happens in relationship. It's a student being given the first
Mm,
time, potentially an opportunity that's non-punitive to talk about what it feels like to be them as a learner. This is what
mm,
it feels like for me when I go to a morning class. This is what it feels like when I come home for the day and I am wiped, but I still have 5 hours of homework. This is what it feels like in
mm,
my brain when I am being pulled at by so many distractions and it's exhausting. This is what it feels like when I'm supposed to show up with all of these really fine, high achieving marks and my parents are so disappointed. Um, and maybe those parents are actually just scared.
mm,
I I think that it's about I don't even want to say co-regulation because my thinking around regulation has changed too. Like, what does it
mm,
mean to kind of contain emotion?
hmm.
That's a whole other thing. But I think that there's nothing more important than relationship. And
Mm,
my thinking through that like or giving it a second thought has entirely come out of decolonized like people who are writing on decolonization
mm.
who like people I've had a beautiful mentor, Joanne Dallaire, who was the
Oh
campus
yeah.
elder for
Cool.
TMU. And we would co-lead talking circles and like just absorbing and integrating her wisdom. None of them are teachings that are for me to share, but like the the takeaway above all takeaways is the primacy of relationship. And so if I'm with a learner, however they identify, the magic happens through being
Mhm,
listened to and being having somebody interested in what you have to say, a person's face that lights up when you pop up on the screen. It's like, hey, how was your week? How are you doing? What is it like to be you and your body and your spirit right now? That's where the magic happens. So much is revealed from that student when you hang out for a moment and be like, how's school going? What
mhm,
is how do you feel? How do you feel about your schoolwork right now?
mhm.
So I think I thought it was about the strategy, but it's actually about the relationship.
That's really interesting because even throughout our whole conversation and just with this work all the time, we talk a lot about students and we talk a lot about youth. But I think most people listening to me are here because they are probably professionals at
Mhm,
work. But you and I know that these kids or these students or these young 20-year-olds become the same adults with the same challenges if they are not, dealt with, if they're not given these strategies or if they've not found this relationship.
mhm.
Does it differ, or and if so, how, with how like when you're dealing with adults who are feeling this kind of struggle? Because I imagine they are not in that formal student, like, title, like, but
Yeah.
they're listening right now and they wanna be better at their work or they wanna be a better parent, and it's very much learning, you know?
Yeah. It's such a good question, Bailey, because I teach parents and professionals and leaders and
Yeah.
executives all the time. And usually, how it comes to be is I have taught their kid,
Oh,
and
wow.
their kid will be like, share a strategy, or the parent will come to, like, I offer group learning strategies, low cost, come. If you can't afford one on one, come and I'll teach you all the things, and then you can share them with your kid. And the parents will literally say to me each time, I'm running one right now. I just had I ran a half hour. It's like 30-minute meals, but of learning strategies. And the parents write me right after being like, I'm going to use the same strategies.
Yeah.
And it's because non-toxic productivity, why would that be different? We might talk about it in like fancier words. It might make it sound more complicated. We might make it more concrete, less nuanced for a kid. But I also really don't underestimate younger humans.
Mhm.
So I love that parents get it. They're like,
Mhm.
this is so helpful. You're teaching my kid note taking, but I actually am using this when I take minutes. Yes, of course. My
Which
kid,
is
I came with,
note-taking,
right?
right?
So my kid is struggling with studying and they're spending hours and hours and hours and hours inefficiently. And now they don't anymore. And I actually am using some of those same strategies to remember. I helped, oh my goodness, a friend of mine. He
Mm.
had to pass the CPA exam. He was studying to become an accountant. Same
Mhm.
thing. But then
Right.
also for professionals who aren't literally taking a test, like these help me remember things. I'm always feeling so
Mm.
doubtful and distrustful of my memory. Great. So we make it seem different. We make it seem like, oh, learning strategies are just for here. They're not. And what's so bizarre to me, Bailey,
Mhm.
is that nobody knows about them. I get that they're very boring words put together. Like, what the heck are learning strategies? My life's work is to sing it from the rooftops. I
Yeah.
want all humans to feel like their pockets are full, like they are equipped with them to pick and choose whatever context they're in. I've
Yeah.
worked with leaders around productivity and time management and prioritization because these are words that are never explained.
Mhm.
They hang there with a kind of shame and imposition. You should just know how to do it. You should just know how
Mhm.
to manage your time. You should
Mhm.
just
That's
know how
right.
to prioritize. That eats at me. Prioritization is about what's important.
Mm.
That's not always so easy for people to discern when there are 15 things that they're responsible for.
Mm.
There are many what's importance, particularly in a grown up professional's life.
Yeah.
So I love your question because it does speak to that. Learning strategies are actually applicable for all, they're transferable to all.
Yeah, that's right. And you're making me think right now, like, one, this should be part of onboarding at companies because I would go out and say the same thing, and our work together back in student affairs was part of what inspired Skills Camp in the first place.
Mm.
Was like, hey, everybody needs these. Like, we
Yeah.
should. How are they not? They're not offered in the classroom. That's clear. And clearly, these people become the same professionals. Things like productivity and time management, and who knows? Maybe we'll co-write a book someday for the
Amen.
professionals.
Amen. Amen.
Okay, yeah, I love it. You all heard it here first. So, one of the things that comes to Skills Camp a lot is adults, gosh, I know kids too, but adults, let's focus on them in their workplace, having trouble focusing. Is there anything that comes to mind for you or kind of go-to tips that you would have for adults trying to kind of manage focusing while balancing work?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
that's good because
Yes. Uh, so I think I want to just make clear that my entire stance on learning strategies is a holistic one. And that came about because just the backstory is I remember sitting with learners across the ages, some mature learners, some, in first or second year in their early 20s. And they would have a Red Bull in their hand and they would have 55 or more tabs on their computer.
Mm.
And they would come in and be like, I'm having a really hard time getting my work done.
Mhm.
And we would talk, and they would be in their pajamas, and they would have been late. So I would talk with them about like all the full constellation, all of what was happening then.
Let's talk lifestyle.
Yes, exactly. Like there are many choice points that are showing up in this space. And I had a boss say, you can't talk about, for example, mindfulness. And I really am not interested in being another like bougie middle-aged person talking about mindfulness. I don't take these things that are like in the zeitgeist and
Mhm,
talk about them uncritically. I'm not interested in that.
mhm,
But having contemplative moment where you can sit in stillness
mhm,
or sit in quiet movement or stand like quietly move or have any kind of quiet like sensory reduced moment feels like a really helpful practice. And I was
mhm.
really taken aback that I was told no.
That's
And that
awesome.
just fueled me. I'm not good with no. So that fueled my desire for
Yeah,
holistic
same.
strategies. So when you ask me, when you ask me strategies for ADHD or strategies for attention,
Mhm,
and professionals who are struggling with their attention, number one is sleep.
mm.
I don't need to be in. Oh my gosh, I'm making the bubbles go off. Thank goodness it's a podcast. I'm getting the like
This
the
is great,
auto
y'all. This is a
notifications.
sign from the universe because Dina said sleep, and for some reason, a bubble with the thumbs up appeared on the screen.
That's so
It's
good. I really love the one where you do this and it's like David Bowie strobe lights come out behind you. Do you know, once I said to none other than Hamza Khan, I want to be the Brene Brown of education. And then I did something with my hands and like firework confetti happened.
yeah.
But it was the first time that like gesture recognition had happened on my computer. And
Mhm.
I was stunned. I'm like, that is a sign from the universe.
Love it all. Let's make it happen for
um,
Dina.
yes.
It is done in the future. Okay,
Yes.
focusing for adults at work.
Speaking of focusing for adults, so I don't know any better strategy to help a person stick to whatever the task is, to top up their concentration than being rested. And
Mhm,
so what happens for people is they turn to like, okay, I'm going to get a new app on my phone. I'm going to track my time. I'm going to be even more on it with to-dos.
mm,
All of that creates a lot of tension when in fact what we really need is just a little bit more rest. That's not the only thing, but it has to be the starting place.
mm,
There's also no better strategy than movement, and movement doesn't mean one thing. I'm not saying you have to go to the gym, I don't say you have to jog, but using your body, having an embodied experience is going to directly nourish the ability to pay attention to whatever it is you want to pay attention.
mhm,
The third thing from this holistic framework is spending time in nature. There is like it's not even that
mm,
there's growing research. It's like almost a nauseating enough now amount
mhm,
of research about the reparative benefits
mm,
of time in nature. You don't even have to do anything, and it doesn't have to be some luxury trip into the woods, all, like glamping. No, quite literally, if you can get to whatever the nearest park is, and you don't have to practice anything. If your eyeballs are drawn to a squirrel in a tree or a cloud floating by, you are in that moment having your deliberate attention, the skill of deliberate attention, which just means paying on
mm,
purpose focus, it is being renourished. So then on top of that, what happens for if we then want like, okay, but great, I've done all of those things and now I have to do the work and I'm in my office,
mhm,
then we have to help ourselves. We have to help ourselves with kind of containers or boundaries. To help ourselves pay attention, we take any big thing and we make it smaller
mm,
so that we're not asking ourselves to use up that deliberate attention for too long. I mean, that's like the fundamental ADHD strategy of chunking. If we're overwhelmed, if we are disinterested, if we are
mhm,
bored, we will turn to anything else, so that we don't have to experience the discomfort of
mhm,
paying attention to the thing that we really have to or are supposed to do. So let's make it small, defined with a clear end so we know when it's enough and we know when we can stop. And then repeat that. It's this idea of like little and often.
mhm,
The other last thing, because I could go on forever, is do something worse. It's a really fun strategy of like, if you really, really are in the throes of procrastination, and you don't want to do whatever the task is. I have to create a presentation that I'm going to do for 150, senior execs, and I really don't want to do it.
Mhm.
Great, do something worse. And I don't mean worse like, okay, I'm going to clean my office, I'm going to clean my house. Like that's annoying, but it's not worse. No, I mean actually do the worst task than the thing that you're procrastinating or feeling distracted from doing right now. And what happens, just the physiology of that, is when we go back to doing the initially dreaded task, it's not so bad.
Yeah, I can see. Okay, well, let's keep these strategies going because in every episode, I give people a thought experiment, and I made yours one that is kind of not a game, but it's kind of a mix of thought experiments
Is this an
and
escape room? Like what?
quick thinking. It's called Top Learning Strategy. So I chose 4 learning challenges for a
Okay.
learner dealing with the following, and I just wanted to hear your number 1 strategy.
Okay.
I'm actually going to make it 3 because I feel like you just gave a really good one for the first one, which is ADHD and focus. And you said chunking. So, can you explain chunking? And then
Yeah.
we'll go to the other 3.
Chunking just is about making a big thing into smaller bits. And so it could be for, it's not just a student. If you are like you've got a legal briefing and it's 100 pages
100%.
long, right? Like, uh, don't try to read 100 pages in one go. And nobody can pay attention for 100 pages. It doesn't matter if you have a diagnostic sentence connected to you or not. That's impossible. So what if we did 10-page sittings? And then we also have to remember that there is going to be ADHD formally present for some folks, or they're reading in a language that is additional to their original one. And so it might take longer. Great. So make it, 25-page sittings. We're making the big thing 100 pages and we're chunking it into smaller. It's how I wrote my books. I would write it 500 words in the morning and 500 words in the evening, 1,000 words a day is
Mhm.
how to write a book, or how I got to write a book. You could do
Right.
50 words, you could do 1,500 words. Anything that you want to do or have to do, if we can break it down into subtasks and spread it out over time, is not just a more humane way and more conducive to productivity and like that cohered focus. But it's also more of a reality because people are balancing caregiving, illness, injury, all
Mhm.
kinds of realities of their life. They're spinning a lot of plates. So
Mhm.
most people don't have a 3-month span of open time and or like cabin in the woods they can just go
Yeah,
to write in. What they're doing is trying to chip away over time. So that's what chunking is.
that is beautiful. The next one is top learning strategy for anxiety. A
Mm.
learning challenge of anxiety.
And any more information? Like, what are they anxious
Yeah.
about? Well, it's
Yeah, good
important. So
point,
here,
good
it's
point.
so are they anxious about a test?
Let's say they are anxious about maybe they have to deliver a report for work
Mhm.
and they are actually just feeling general anxiety about their life. I don't know. That's not
Yeah.
very, I don't
No,
know if
no, I
that's
got it.
good
I got it.
context. That
So,
would be
and
probably more akin to some of my students, though.
yeah, yeah. So, I get that one, and I'm really careful to stay in my lane around mental health because
Mm.
learning strategies are therapeutic, but not therapy. And so, if a human is
Mm.
like, oh, this is like capital A anxiety, then that's like, oh, awesome. Really go make use of all
Mm.
of the like unstigmatized, stigmatized
I feel like you're
services.
giving the learning strategy right now,
Yeah.
which is
Um,
like, I'm hearing something.
Yeah. So there's so many beautiful places to get support and connection and allyship and holding the things that make you anxious. But if we're thinking about a learner who is feeling like worry and overwhelm,
Mhm.
for me that's the somatic. That's the in the body. It's like stress that's tipped a little too high.
Mhm.
And so I think about anything that has to do with moving the body, shaking. Here's why. Here's why.
Cool.
If you're with a dog and the dog gets scared by another dog, what does the dog do? Right after the stress is gone, they shake. They just, you
Hmm.
don't have to be like, all right, well, here's a really helpful learning strategy intervention.
Oh,
Like they just do
interesting.
it. They're just like, "Whoa."
Oh my
And
gosh, I
we
love this.
don't do that. We don't do it. We have the stress lodged in our body and it stays
Mhm.
there. and it accumulates and accumulates. And then we have storylines and storylines, and we can talk about imposter syndrome. Like, what is my feeling about this report? Do I think that it's not going to be good enough? And who's going to judge it? And what are the
Mm.
consequences or the stakes? And so any which way that you can move your body, you can literally, like borrowing from Qigong or something, you can shake. Again, not mine to teach. I don't want to appropriate anything, but there's so many ways that you can move your body, and that can
Mhm.
help dispel some of that nervous, worried energy. Because what we really want to do is kind of get back into that like window of tolerability. Like, I have
Mhm.
stress because I want to perform well, and I understand that stress helps me perform well, but I don't want it to tip too high. I
Mhm.
don't want it to be higher than I have capacity to tolerate. So
Yeah.
there are so many ways, through breath, through like getting close to the ground, through focusing on sensory input. But I love the accessibility of move your body in any which way that you like to move your body.
Mhm.
Can help with some of that like jittery,
Mhm.
the jittery
I
and the
could see that for sure.
concerns. Yeah. Like, I mean, they tell kids this all the time too. If you're nervous about going to bed, have a good jump, like get on a little mini trampoline
Mm.
and jump on the couch. It does something. It does something, and we underestimate the power of our bodies to
Yeah.
help, um, to be a main player, a main
Yeah.
helper in our toolbox.
Yeah, and I definitely do not want to diminish it, but I hear the learning strategy there, which I think is an easy one for people to adopt if you've been sitting all day feeling
Yeah.
nervous. Just try it. Judge yourself later and just try doing some jumping jacks and getting back to it. Okay. The next one is, what if someone is struggling with loneliness? So, like, a
Mm.
learning challenge is loneliness, but that, yeah, yeah, because at first it seems unconnected to learning. So I'm interested in what you have to say.
I love this. Um, loneliness can lower GPA.
Mm.
Loneliness has a direct impact on academic performance. But I want to be, I think, really clear because being alone
Hmm.
isn't a problem.
Yeah,
So I'm assuming by your question, it's a kind human who longs to have more connection
I think
than
so.
they have. Because I'll tell you, as a person who works probably a little bit too much and has two humans, and I have a stepdaughter too, so it's like I long for more alone
Oh, yeah,
time.
no, I
I'll
spend a lot
never
of time alone. I am
right,
not
right?
lonely. I totally know what you mean.
Like, haven't really recovered from the pandemic, where I think in the 3 years I had 7 minutes of alone time. Like, I don't think I will ever have topped up my need for alone time. Um, the antidote to loneliness, I think, more than like find a friend online or go to a group, or I think it's tapping into wherever there's a source of connection.
Mm.
And the easiest starting place for me would be in the natural world, where you would feel a larger connection, um, with creation, like with aliveness. It would
Hmm.
be a connection with aliveness. So I don't mean to get too etheric. I don't mean to get
Yeah,
um,
go there. It's called Let's
abstract.
Think This Through. And I think people need to hear things that they may not otherwise be exposed to. Like, we are in very particular fields and we get to think about different ways of knowing and learning and being often. But if you're listening to this, this might be something that we just need to be reminded of. Hey, you know what? I do have a park. Why not go try this? Why not
Yeah,
go, join? You know what? Heck, go join Dina's group learning strategies. If you're just looking for some community that comes with the content too, like,
yeah.
heck, I'll promote it for you.
Blessings. That's so kind. I'm possibly the worst at that, so I appreciate that. I I think that a very low stakes way to feel connection is in the natural world. And then once you have a place where you're like, there's something about this orientation of trees or the way the light falls, when that feels like, oh, I actually can discern that. There's like a palpable sensation, right? Like I am part of the world.
Mm.
I'm part of the world. Then I would next try, whether it's walking or rolling, whatever your means of movement is, um, in nature. So that would be the next step, is to find a local walking group, a
Mm.
local strolling group. And the reason for that is often it can be really difficult to make like eyeball to eyeball connection and the intensity and the awkwardness and the like, and now you ask a question and then like now I ask a question. But when you're side by side and you take that awkwardness of
Hmm.
relationship building out and your gaze is externally focused and you have other things that you can comment on and reflect on, there is an ease of connection making.
Hmm.
So I like starting with just getting familiar with like a lovely spot, and like first connection, first relationship is with the world and nature, and
Hmm.
then second one would be actually trying to move with other humans and then see what happens from there. And the beauty is you're actually also restoring your attention
Hmm.
um, along with it.
A double
Double learning
whammy
strategy.
strategy. Okay, Dina, we are coming to the end of our time together, and
No, I want to hang out more.
I know this is the problem. I need to just at some point I should just have like a let's think this through dinner, and all the guests who are ever here are invited or something.
So fun. Great. When is that? I'm in.
I don't know. I don't know, but I'm into the idea, so maybe sometime soon. But I do end every episode with something called train of thought, where we connect an idea from the last episode to this episode. And this was not planned, but your train of thought is pretty perfectly set up for you because first off, what would you say is a kind of one main idea from this episode or our conversation together?
Relationship.
Okay. And the importance of?
Relationship as starting place for everything else.
Okay. Relationship is the starting place for everything else. Now, the one main idea they pulled out of the last episode was, and again, pretty perfect for you. She said, as soon as you can, understand that we all have energy and learn to understand yours. As soon as you can, like her advice and her main idea from our conversation was as soon as you can, understand that we all have energy and learn to understand yours.
Mm.
How does this connect to our episode in the top of your mind?
We're not discrete beings floating around separate. We are interrelated. We are in relationship.
Mm,
And there is a, there, it's like there's like a bi-directionality. If you understand yours, you can know how to show up radiantly in the world. And that's what I'm trying to help all the learners I encounter do, is to like take up as much space, use their voice, use their insight, figure out what they love and how to move in the direction of doing the thing they love. But it's also around the magic in interaction. What happens when you're in that kind, when you're in a dynamic, because there's almost always an alchemy to it, right? Like somebody says something, you're like, oh, that feels good. Oh, that feels like relief. Oh, that feels resonant. Like the chord that is strummed, I can feel that. And
mhm.
so ooh, like thank you to your previous
Yeah.
previous guest for that nugget. Understand your energy and how and its impact on, is that it?
Yeah, like first off, she's like, we all have it. And I know she wished that she had understood her own energy sooner. Hmm. Well, there
There
you go,
is,
people. I love that you're kind of saying, like, in relationship, the
yeah,
energy is two. That would be the most natural thing, is kind of one thing I'm hearing.
I love that deeply. And the gift for me is that the students I work with sometimes, or the learners, the humans I get to work with, don't necessarily come knowing it, but it's the greatest privilege to help them discover it or rediscover it.
That is a beautiful thing to end on. Dino, is there any other piece of advice that you would have for listeners before we close out?
Advice. Well, I mean, what are the takeaways? Don't say no. Be basically impossible. Ask people for help. And while you might be said only if you pay $1,800 for a half hour, most people are going to say yes. I'm really happy to help you. And so my advice is, um, in a way, follow Bailey's example. There's a
Oh,
generosity of
that's nice.
spirit. There's a
Oh.
generosity of spirit that we forget that we have. And sometimes we feel so depleted or overrun.
Mhm.
And we forget that actually it doesn't always take so much to uplift the others around us with a half an hour of time or one piece of advice or one connection, or it's endless. But
Mhm.
it can be so helpful in a sometimes lonely world. So
Mhm.
thank you for that, Bailey.
And thank you for being here.